Hello, my name is Naomi. Welcome to part two of my mom's story. And I left off on the first one where my mother had just gotten divorced or separated and moved back in with her mother and her little daughter. I think I don't know a lot of the details because I wasn't told about these things till I was way older. And but so I kind of fill in with what I think might have been exact dates and times and stuff. So I think my sister was about 1 years old, maybe just a hair over, maybe two. But anyway, she moved back in with her mother. My grandmother had gotten divorced, moved back to Southern Illinois, and then my mom moved back with her. So after that, there she was there for a while. She got a job, taking care of her daughter and daycare and all that stuff. And then my uncle Gene, my aunt, had got married a second time to her high school sweetheart. Um, they got married. I'm not sure how old they were, but anyway, she married him, and he worked with a guy that he wanted to go on a double date with my mom and my aunt and this guy George. So my mom said, "Okay." So she goes on a double date. Oh gosh, I forget part of the story again. See, I go backwards. So when my mom moved back, yeah, when my mom moved back in with my grandmother, she was there for a while, and then Martin, the guy Martin, who knew my mom when she moved to Chicago, he found out that she came back. So right away he goes over there to see her. Then he realizes she has a kid, and he saw bruises on her from her ex-husband, and he was just like, "How could this guy do this to you?" And he was just very upset. So he ended up they they got back together, and they got engaged. They were going to get married, and then at her job, and then now I guess she moved in with him, I think. And then she was at her job, and they had a Christmas party, and so there was some guy there, and he had asked her to dance. And now my mom's very insecure, and insecure people, they want attention and they want to know that you care, and just how people are. So when she comes home from the party, Martin says, "So how was the party?" And she said it was fun. And then she starts, telling how this guy was flirting with her and that she danced with him, and she's just getting, trying to make him jealous. Well, he got beyond jealous. He got so mad he just left the house. And my mom's like, "Okay." He didn't come back till the morning. And he comes back and she's like, "What the heck, where have you been?" He goes, "Oh man." He goes, "I was so mad." He goes, "I went out and I started drinking. I got drunk and just, drinking my feelings. And then I thought it was a good idea to enlist in the army." So he went and enlisted. He goes, "So now I have to go to boot camp for how many ever weeks. And then they're shipping me to Japan for like, I don't know, 6 months or a year." And she's like, "You got to be kidding me." He's like, "Nope." And so he did his boot camp, and they said goodbye. He had to go, and so she's going to wait for him here or in Illinois. So in the meantime, now my sister's about like 2.5 by now. So then my uncle has had works with this guy named George, and he said, "Hey Donnie, because you're alone all the time. Why don't you just come out and the four of us will go, just have a good time and hang out. Just go have a beer or whatever they do back then. I don't know, in the 50s." So she goes, "I guess so." So my grandma watched my sister, and then they went out, and then so my mom kind of started hanging out with this guy a little bit, and next thing you know, she got pregnant. Not a good thing, but it is what it is, right? So um, she feels bad for Martin, but I mean he's gone, and just life is happening, right? So he does the right thing. The man says, "Okay, well, let's get married." And she said, "Okay." So they got married, and then obviously they moved in together. And then my brother's born. And then mind you, my whole life I never knew I had a brother or a sister. So that's where the story gets really weird. Um, so she has my brother, and now she has my sister and my brother now. And then when he was, I don't know, a month old, she went back to work, and then they had a babysitter. And then, and my mom really didn't like this guy. I mean, she liked him, but she was not in love with him. So she wasn't real affectionate towards him. And, he could tell that she wasn't really into him or whatever. And, they only got married because of the baby. And, which was good that he honored that. I think that was good. But, sometimes, I don't know, whatever. So, uh, the babysitter falls in love with her husband. So he starts having an affair with the babysitter. So then my mom finds out about it, and he said that he wanted to get divorced because he wants to be with this other woman. So my mom's like, okay, great. So in the meantime, my grandma got married again. So she moved away. So here was my mom with two kids now. So my brother, I think he was 6 months old. So she knew there was no way she could take care of two kids. So she told him, she was, well, you can take care of George, and I'll keep Connie, and she'll visit or whatever, but she can't raise both kids. And he said, okay. So he took George, and then later down the road, my mom didn't know he wasn't even raised by his dad. He was raised by his grandma, because the babysitter who got married didn't like my brother because she was jealous because he was my mom's kid. So it's just ugliness. So so my mom has my sister. She's working, and she's renting a room from a woman, and pretty soon things are getting really tough. My mom financially just could not make it anymore. And so she asked my sister's dad. She said, can you please help me, because I don't have enough money to take care of her. I can't even buy her milk, and she needs food, and I can't afford it. And he's like, sure, I'll help you, but you got to come back to me. And she's like, no, I'm never coming back to you, because I'm never going to let you ever abuse me like that and hit me and stuff. Because one of us would end up dead, because I'm not going to be abused again. And he said, okay, then give me custody of her. My mom said, no, you can't have custody. I just want you to help me. She's your daughter. I want you to help me. And so they were sitting in a diner or something, and she was getting really frustrated. So she's like, okay, fine. She was here. So she writes on a napkin, you can have custody. And then, and then she gives him the napkin. She goes, but when I get on my feet, I'll come back for her. And then he's like, okay. And then next thing you know, when my mom wanted to go see her, she couldn't find him because he moved. And she had no idea where he went. And she was asking his friends. Nobody, I don't know if people didn't know or just wouldn't say. So she was freaking out. She couldn't find her. She couldn't, and her daughter's everything to her. That's all she has left. And then in the meantime, my grandma got divorced and then moved back. And by now, my mom would have been able to keep her daughter because her mom was there, but now she didn't even know where she's at. Horrible thing. So um, it wasn't too long, and then my uncle had a job opportunity or something to come to California. And so my aunt and uncle are going to move to California, and my grandma wanted to go. So that just leaves my mom all by herself. And my uncle said, we're not going to leave Donna here by herself. She has to come with us. And my mom's like, but I don't want to leave my daughter. He's like, but we'll find her when we get to California. We'll hire somebody to help you find her. We'll come back and we'll get her. And he goes, because I'm not leaving you here by yourself. And then so they all moved. They all came to California. And then so my uncle got it. So they all got jobs. They're renting an apartment. And then I don't think he didn't have a job. They just knew there was more opportunity in California than where they were. So my uncle got a job, and he's working for my dad. My dad was a mechanic, and he hired my uncle. And my dad had a gas station in LA, and so he hired my uncle, and he worked there. And then he came home one day and told my mom, there's a super nice man I want you to meet. My mom's like, I don't need to meet any more men. He's like, no, Donna, this guy is so nice. So she finally meets my dad, and my dad is just like he really was just the nicest, sweetest, kindest. Everybody will tell you that, and they don't, when God made him, he broke the mold for sure. But anyway, so my mom started dating him, and it wasn't long. And my dad was a little older, and he had he had different girlfriends, but he really was like he'd rather go and read a book because girls were just trouble. He wasn't like a partier and going out. He just wasn't that kind of guy. So my he asked my mom to marry him, and then she's like, "Well, let me tell you my story, and then if you still want to marry me, I'll marry you." So and he goes, "Okay." So she tells him the story. He goes, "Okay." He goes, "So after we get married, he goes, we'll find your daughter, and we'll go get your daughter, and we'll go see your son." And she's like kind of shocked that he'd even want to invest in that. So he so they ended up getting married, and then she finally found where my sister was at. So they got to court, but she wasn't allowed to see my sister prior to court. And it was about when they found her and filed. I think it took about 6 months before the court date. So my mom was in California, so my mom would send her stuff. She'd send her dresses and like toys and stuff, dollies and stuff. And so they go to court, and then the judge, Bob pulls out the napkin where my mom said you could have custody, and so the judge counted that as evidence or whatever. And then he said, "Yeah, and then you also had a son that you let the other dad take him, so you're not a fit mother." So my mom just like lost it. And so he got custody of my sister. So my mom was just devastated. And then before they left, she got to see my sister. And my sister was really sad that she couldn't go with my mom. And she was so happy to see my mom. And she goes, "Yeah." She goes, I my stepmom, because he by now he's married to some witch who's a step monster, right? And she goes, "Yeah." She showed me the stuff you buy me and send me, like the pretty dresses and dolls and stuff. But she told me that I'm not good enough for them. They're too good for me. So she's been giving them away to other people, and I'm not allowed to have them. And my mom was just like, "You got to be kidding me." I mean, talk about break your heart. So they went back to California, and then they were still gonna plan to do something, right? And by now my mom is just so sad, just devastated. And then she got pregnant, and then she had a miscarriage, got pregnant, had a miscarriage. I think she had like probably four miscarriages, and she just was not a happy person. And so like on the fourth miscarriage, and my brother shared a story with me not too long ago, but the video came out really bad, so I'm trying to get him to do it again. But on her fourth miscarriage, my brother was born to another woman who wasn't married, and she was giving him up for adoption. So the doctor came into my mom and said, "Hey, there was a little baby boy just born, and I'd really like you to have him if you want him." And my mom said, "Yeah, I'll take him." So they adopted my brother that very day, and then his name was Baby Boy King, I think was his name. And so they got to bring him home. I think he was 3 days old because the mom had some little time to decide she really wanted to do that. And then after that, they have a whole year. So she brings him home, and she's more at peace because she has this little baby, and so life's going along. And then so probably just a few months later, she ends up getting pregnant again, and she got pregnant with me. And so I was born. Me and my brother are 20 months apart. So but when she had me, it kind of threw her back because I was born with a ton of hair, and my sister had no hair when she was born. And my mom looked at me and she said, "This is not my baby. My baby doesn't have hair." She's like, "Where's my baby?" She's like, "Free." So she just was losing it. So, cause all that, was wearing on her. And then, so when they sent her home with me, and that my grandma came to help take care of me too, cause my mom, all she would do is cry and cry and cry and just, so they finally, I think I was about probably 3 or 4 months old. My mom, the depression was just eating her alive. sent her to a mental institution, and they started giving her shock treatments. It's so sad. It's like, and then because she did tell me about shock treatments and that, but she didn't tell me like the whole story why. And I think she said because she had miscarriages, but she never told me her life story, right? Um, so she had the shock treatments, and then would leave her with horrible headaches all the time, and I think even the rest of her life after that, she would think, her head just pain in her head all the time. It's like, God, that's just so inhumane, but that's what they did. So when I was I think I was probably 3 maybe, we went to a Baptist church, and then they were doing some reconstruction or whatever they were doing, and they needed some drywall hung. So my mom would always help anybody because that's just how she was. She was very giving, very loving. If somebody needed something and she had it, she gave it away, and then she'd go buy a new one later when she needed it. But if she had it, she'd just give it away. She gave our beds away. I don't know how many times, some of our furniture, and she just buy more later. But that's just how she was. She couldn't stand to see people without, because she was mistreated her whole life, but that didn't taint her. It made her sad, but that made her love people even more. And it's just what a good story though. That's because God was in her life, even though she didn't always see him. She still felt guilty about everything, and so she carried this guilt all the time. So this minister was saying, "Yeah, we want you to come and help hang drywall." And she's like, "Well, I don't know if I should because I'm pregnant," and so he just made her feel bad. So guilt takes her over, or maybe he didn't. Maybe that's just in her head. She would feel guilty not to go. So she went to help hang the drywall, and she had a miscarriage. And my dad found out about it. He was so mad that he stopped going to church because I'm not coming to church again. How dare you? Because she lost her baby, and she had no business in here doing drywall. So let me back up a little bit again. So when my brother, so I'm 20 months different, but when he was a year old, so my mom's pregnant with me now. He was just before he became a year old. The mom got back to get the natural mother got back together with her husband because they were separated, and which is why she was giving him up for adoption because she had had an affair with another man and got pregnant, and that's where my brother was coming from. So the man came back and he said, "Well, let's go get your son." So she went back to court to get custody of my brother, take him back. She changed her mind on the adoption because you have up to a year. And then when my mom got that letter, it's like, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me! You're going to tear this little boy away from her after everything she's been through. I mean, that is just horrendous. So my mom was, devastated again. Thank God she didn't lose me. But the night before court, her husband had a massive heart attack and died. It's like, and then so she said she stopped the proceedings and said, no, I can't take him. She can keep him. That is insane. It's like, oh my gosh. I mean, I'm not glad the guy died, but it's like that is just it's crazy. And then but my whole life growing up, my brother was my brother. I never thought differently. And then so I used to ask my Mom, do I have a brother or a sister? And she'd say, no. I mean, since I was little, and then I would tell her, why do you used to cry all the time? And she said, what do you mean? I said, I just remember you used to cry a lot. And she would look at me like, who are you? How can you possibly remember this? Because I was so little when this was happening. And that's when she told me about her shock treatment, but she didn't tell me the whole story as to why. And then I would keep asking her, I go, was I maybe a twin and the other one died? And she said, no. And I said, but I feel like I have a sister or a brother, Mom. And she said, no. I said, did Dad have other kids? No. And then when I was about 17, my mom came, we were talking, and she finally, I think I asked her again if I had a sister. She goes, okay, you have a sister. I said, what? I said, are you kidding me? And so she told me the story about my sister, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Mom! I said, why didn't you ever tell me this? And she said, because I didn't want you to hate me. I said, why would I hate you? How could I possibly hate you? And because that's how she felt. She felt guilty about everything. Her mom always made her feel bad. Her sister always made her feel bad. Everybody always made her feel like she was nothing, right? And she just couldn't take any more rejection, especially from her own child, right? I'm like, Mom, well, let's find her. And so I said, where does she live? She said, well, last I knew, she was in Illinois. I said, okay. So my mom started calling around and finding around. So then she found her grandmother who lived not too far from where we were at. And then she gave her my sister's number, and my mom called her, and right away she's like, "Oh my gosh, Mom!" She was so happy to hear from my mom. And she's a grown woman now, and she has kids. She's in her almost 30. I mean, maybe a little past 30. I'm not sure. Yeah, I can't remember. But anyway, um, so my mom flew out there to see them right away. She had a daughter and a son, and married, and just learning her story a little bit. And then a few months later, they flew out to come and see us, and they spent like the whole summer with us. And the minute I saw her, I mean, I'm gonna start crying thinking about it. But the minute I saw her, I knew she was my sister. Oh, and she had the most beautiful blue eyes I'd ever seen. They were like a turquoise, deep blue. They were beautiful. And I'm sorry. And I would just hug her and just kiss her all the time, just like, oh my gosh, you're my sister. And she would kind of cry, and she didn't know how to take it because she was so rejected her whole life, worse than my mom. I mean, she wasn't even allowed to talk to her dad. Her stepmom was horrible to her. And so she got married at like 16, 17 years old just to get out of the house. And then one day she came up to my mom and she said, Mom, she hugs and kisses me. And my mom's like, well, yeah, because she loves you. And but my sister wasn't used to that kind of love. And man, just thinking about it today, and this is, gosh, so many years ago. And anyway, so it was so sad for them to go home after 3 months. And I mean, her daughter was like close to, I mean, not too much younger than me, and she wanted to be like me. It's like, I'm a little bit older than you, and I just wanted to know my sister. Not that I didn't like her, but she was very like bossy, and maybe because our birthdays were like a day apart. She was like June 17th, I'm June 16th, and I'm thinking, I mean, I think she was too. I don't know. I'm not into the birthday thing, but it's just kind of weird, right? So, so they went back home, and not too much later, they like about maybe a year and a half, they moved out to California, and then I had moved out on my own by then, and so they moved into my parents had got another house, so they moved in there, and then they got jobs and everything, and yep, and I will finish more of the story on my next one. So that'll be number 3. So I hope you're enjoying it so far. And um, uh, I'm trying to think about maybe when I can make the next one. Maybe maybe tomorrow. I'll try. We'll see. Anyway, you guys have a good day, and thank you for listening, and take care.